BMW in the early 2000s was at the top of its game. The E46 M3 was excelling in the sports car market with its good looks, exceptional S54 inline 6, and sharp handling. However, for a few years, if you wanted the fastest four-door sedan on the planet, you set your sights on one of these. The E39 M5 is German muscle at its finest. Today, like the E46, it enjoys a massive following from purists who use language like legendary to describe it. So, nearly 20 years on from its conception, can it live up to the hype? The M5 really bridges the gap between something like a big muscle car and a sports car. Want to burble around town in total comfort? You got it. Roll race on the highway? Check. Or demolish a section of back road? Check. This is a car that really ticks a lot of boxes. The only real compromise comes in the form of weight. At 4,000 pounds, the E39 really isn't a lightweight. However, with rear-wheel drive and a well-balanced chassis, it actually overcomes the weight. Now, it's never going to be as spry as something like an E46 M3 or Porsche 911, but it was never designed to be. Where this car really shines, though, is through long sweepers, where you can make use of its great grip and long gearing. Now, the steering is well-weighted and it's hydraulically assisted, so you get a good amount of feel from the front end. But it doesn't feel quite as natural or progressive as something like an E46 M3 or even other E39s. Now, part of this is likely because the M5 is using a recirculating ball style steering system rather than the rack and pinion that was found in something like an E46 M3 or other 3 Series. In fact, when a BMW engineer was asked as to why the rack and pinion system didn't make it into the M5, they replied by saying that if they had known how well that was going to work in the 6-cylinder cars, they likely would have tried to make it fit in the V8 cars. Now, despite this, I still find the steering to be effective. It's just not quite as nice to use as some other BMWs. Now, initial turn-in is surprisingly sharp for a car of this size. And it's a joy to drive on any road. Especially considering it's rock solid over bumps, even mid-corner. It's very confidence-inspiring. This is also at a time that BMW M was just coming to grips with electronic driver aids. Meaning you have electronic stability and traction control, but they're relatively simple and they're easy to disable. One press of the DSC button and it's just you and the car. And once you do that, rotation and oversteer is just a stab of throttle away. With its quick steering, limited slip differential at the back, and long wheelbase, this is a very friendly car at the limit. There are never any scary moments. Oversteer is easy to control, it's very progressive, and it never tries to snap on you. Let's talk about this power plant for a bit. This 4.9-liter naturally aspirated V8 dominates the driving experience. Codenamed S62, this engine makes 400 horsepower and 370 pound-feet of torque. Now keep in mind, this is back in 2000, when, for reference, the Mustang GT was only making about 260 horsepower. In fact, it wasn't until the release of the 5-liter Coyote engine in 2011 that the Mustang GT made more power than the old E39 M5s. The S62 feels strong throughout the entire rev range, but it really wants to be wound out to its 7,000 RPM redline. To say that this engine suits the car would be an understatement. By mating it to a direct and accurate 6-speed manual, the only option they offered, and a limited slip differential at the rear, you wind up with near perfection. So let's talk about the E39 styling for a little bit. Now, although this is obviously subjective, I think that the E46 and E39 are two of my very favorite BMW designs. Modern lines and sculpting are harmoniously mated to classic BMW styling cues. The car has an understated, elegant, yet aggressive presence that I don't think even BMW themselves have matched since. On the inside, the E39 is aging well, but not quite as well as the E46. The fact that it was designed in the early 90s and then released in the mid-90s is noticeable. It's still an elegant and well-appointed place to be, but the one thing that really dates it is the infotainment system. There's definitely an air of quality in here though. The material choice is excellent and everything feels like it's just going to last forever. The headliner is a beautiful suede material and there's stitched leather all over the interior. Although they're comfortable, I find that the seats could use a bit more bolstering for a car that packs so much performance. I find myself sliding around a little bit more than I'd like mid-corner. Overall, the inside of an E39 is still a very nice place to be, even after all these years. Looking back at cars like this today, it becomes apparent just how over-engineered they really were. It's over 18 years old now, and I really can't imagine needing more car than this, especially on the street. Each generation of the M5 gets more and more advanced, more complex. The E60 that followed this had hundreds of electronic drive modes and adjustments. The F10 gained 2 turbochargers, and the new F90 has a dynamic all-wheel drive system. So, for better or worse, the M5 evolves over time. Each generation is faster, more capable, and feature-packed than the last. Outright capability is only part of the equation. Statistics breed discussion, but the way the car feels, the way it sounds, the way that you connect with it, those breed emotion. That's why it's important to cherish these older M's. They represent where BMW came from, and for me personally, where they were at their absolute best.